What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, presented by Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL, who's all in all season, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Nate Tice. Nate, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Just I realized I had to change sweatshirts because I was wearing the exact same thing I wore yesterday when I saw you. And I just don't want you to think a little lesser of me because we do these back-to-back shows together. But also just showed my film grindingness of yesterday into today, which included watching Broncos Giants back, which was something. I'll say that. It was something. But it is great to see you, Matt Harmon. I'm excited to talk ball today.
It's a game that happened. Let's put it that way. No, that's what a great film bro flex to say. Yeah, I've just been grinding so much tape that I didn't even know I was wearing the same sweatshirt as yesterday. I mean, we've all been there. We've all definitely.
My personal hygiene just drops off a shelf. I wouldn't say off a cliff. I say a shelf. During the season, it's just like haircuts become more infrequent. The comfy sweatshirt, especially with this weather dips below 70. Oh yeah, comfy sweatshirt might it gets a nice 48-hour run at least.
Well, there we go. All right. Well, it's a good.
Ball.
Well, good because it's good that you've been watching ball. It's good that you've been grinding this tape because we have a ton to get into here on today's episode of the Fantasy Film Room. For the new folks for the show, we have a very specific structure. First two segments, it's the Fantasy Film Room with Nate. Today we're doing a quarterback check-in. Very excited to do that. Then we talk Thursday Night Football. We're going to be previewing Vikings Chargers. Very fascinating game. Perhaps Carson Wentz's last start for this Vikings team, although we will break that all down in that segment. Then the final segment, we say goodbye to Nate, and Joel Smyth joins the show to give us 5 Buzz is Building players. But with that, let's waste no more time. Let's get into the Fantasy Film Room. All right, welcome to the Fantasy Film Room presented by Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL, who's all in all season with another year of Toyota Game Day giveaways from NFL shop gear to even Brock Purdy's favorite Sequoia. Toyota is giving fans a chance to win big. Visit toyota.com/NFL to learn more. Yes, as mentioned at the top, for today's Film Room segment, we're going to do a little quarterback check-in because, Nate, you've been watching that tape, but I know you love to dial in on the quarterbacks. So I was like, let's get a little layup topic for both of us here because I've spent a ton of time watching these offenses. I know you're dialed in on the quarterbacks, and anytime I can come up with a esoteric little metric, a little ranking system, and
unbelievable stuff here, Matt Harmon. I had to give you props on this.
This is right up my alley. If I can take 2 metrics, average amount, come up with a ranking system, I am going to do it. So that was my inspiration for the show today. It's a little spoiler alert. We might be doing a rookie check-in next week, so people can get excited about that. And since there's not a lot of exciting rookie quarterbacks to talk about, we won't do a lot of overlapping between these 2 weeks. So here's what we're doing today. Just table set. We're going to be taking a deep dive into quarterback metrics versus man and zone coverage, in addition to their work under pressure versus not under pressure. And the first one, we're going to be looking at coverage. So the gap between quarterback performance when they face man coverage versus zone coverage. We're going to try to just run through these and get some big picture takeaways, some individual takeaways about these offenses. Just a little more about the methodology. Basically, the metric that I came up with was just the average of these quarterbacks' rankings versus man and zone coverage and pressure, not under pressure, the average of their adjusted yards per attempt and EPA per dropback for each, and then the gap between the two. So we're going to talk quarterbacks that are better versus man versus better versus zone. The sample is 34 quarterbacks that have taken 100-plus dropbacks this year. There are some guys that would have qualified in the better versus man or better versus zone or whatever bucket that are like Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Jake Browning, etc. We don't need to talk about those guys. So there are some gaps there with those players. We do not need to make Nate talk about how Jake Browning has thrown 8 interceptions versus zone coverage this year. He also doesn't lead the league in that metric, which is a perfect transition into our first topic, which is let's look at the quarterbacks that have the big gaps between their performance in man and zone coverage. And first, we're going to talk through the guys that are better versus man coverage than working against zone coverage. So I'm just going to throw these names out at you, Nate, and you pick which one interests you the most. So these are the quarterbacks who are much better versus man coverage. There's a double-digit ranking in their double-digit gap in their rankings versus man and zone coverage efficiency. Tua Tagovailoa is number one. He is third versus man coverage and 33rd versus zone coverage. Caleb Williams also averages out to third versus man coverage, 21st versus zone coverage. Trevor Lawrence, 15th versus man, 28th versus zone. Bo Nix, 13th versus man, 24th versus zone. Jalen Hurts, 9th versus man and 19th versus zone. And a little bit of a cheat here. I threw Jackson Dart in because he's got a pretty big gap, not as much as the others, but he's also 13th versus man and 21st versus zone. So I throw that bucket of players out at you, Nate Tice. Anything stand out to you is like, oh, this really matches like what I'm seeing, or I need to dive into this a little bit further.
There's a lot of raw meat here to chew on. I'll start with Tua, which is more kind of, I think this one's very self-explanatory because it's just like, hey, if you've watched the Dolphins and seen their woes over the past few years, this kind of has cropped up. Tua definitely throwing over the middle, leading to, interceptions where, I mean, this could be a classic thing in a Shanahan offense because of how many throws happen over the middle. The Jimmy G kind of meme that spawned about what his throws over the middle, where man coverage, and I think just overall, not even just including Tua, man coverage is just kind of why some players can be better is obviously they have better receivers, but usually there's just easier answers for the quarterback. Okay, I picked this guy. It could be a go ball. It could be something vertical, something easy to see, and something easy to throw for a quarterback. So even ones that are struggling can have success against man. But I think with Tua is the zone stuff is, all right, defenses really picked up on what the Dolphins like to do when they drop back and their RPO game. And so they just kind of like learn how to play it. Let's not try and live in man coverage against Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. All right, let's just play more zone and make them make tight window throws. The Bills had an interception, I think, or no, it might have been someone. There was a big day where Tua's interception got broke down like 500 times. But on that one's like a great
the Bills,
example.
Thursday night, I think was that the Bills Thursday night one?
Thursday night, yes. But that one is a great example of why when you don't have overwhelming traits, especially when the field gets tighter, where it's that lack of arm strength that Tua has, where he has to rely on anticipating on throws so much. But when he has to make a bang bang throw, it can just lead to a lot of poor plays and negative plays, especially as defenses have learned to clamp on the Dolphins and just their vibes as an entire organization has completely gone out the window because they are just a zombie team right now. So it's kind of funny just to kind of pick at with the Dolphins. There's others with that, but that's the one I feel is the most kind of easy to explain because it's just eye test what's happened with this team narratively as well. It just kind of all shows up. That's like a perfect stat for it, I think.
Yeah, he's thrown 9 interceptions against zone coverage this year, which leads the NFL. Like I said, Jake Browning is second with 8. My God, I mean, so few games, 8 interceptions. So you can see why they obviously went after Joe Flacco. And then 7 interceptions, Geno Smith. He is third here. He did not qualify for a big gap because he's not been good against either coverage this year. But yeah, I thought that one is obviously instructive too because he's kind of a one-read quarterback is Tua. And again, if it's predetermined versus man coverage, he's only really got one receiver right now. It makes sense that he can be good against those man coverage looks. But when you've got to read the field out, he's trying to get that ball out quickly. It's usually just dump it to Achane in the flat. And that has not always been a fruitful throw this year. He's actually got 2 picks throwing to Devon Achane this year, does Tua, which is it's the only He's the only running back with double-digit interceptions when targeted this year, Devon Achane. So, yeah, it's a pretty outrageous thing. I also think Caleb Williams, maybe not as stark, but I think similar in terms of when he's got he's got a Dunze who's a great man coverage receiver. DJ Moore's a good man coverage receiver. It makes sense. I think when Caleb has to kind of pick his spots, I think and he struggled to kind of, he's a little bit of a line drive thrower right now. Yes. If he can just rifle that thing into Odunze into a man coverage situation, those connections have been good. But I think when he's got to put certain touch on it and kind of layer it through zones, that's been a struggle for him as well.
Yeah, and that's I think something that's like you see him getting better at, but still he will struggle where he has this weird disconnect because he has one of the strongest arms in the NFL, and it's pretty easy to actually say that as you watch more of him. Is that sometimes he's leading while throwing a rocket, and it's kind of a physics thing. It's like if you throw harder, you don't have to lead as much. You can kind of pin it on them and put it on them, and then yes, it's not perfect where the guy's going to outstretched hands. It's like just put it on their chest. Paul Chris, his line was always dent the keg. just dent the keg, throw it at their belly. And that's what I think sometimes that if I were kind of like his personal coach, as quarterback coach, that's what I would kind of really work on with him. And I see improvement. There are times where he is throwing it right on a guy, but then I also see some misses where it's like he's going to the right guy, but there's just like he's throwing it upfield when the receiver settles, or the receiver is moving upfield and he throws it behind, like he's just over, like kind of he's trying to lead him and he tries to get a little too cute with it. That's where I could see that happening in zone. Where I think a lot of his best zone throws are to the outside, but there has been a nice improvement on the inside stuff. And that's why I've been pretty bullish on what Caleb's doing and what just Ben Johnson and that whole offense. The run game stuff's cool too. But I do think more of the zone stuff is he's getting more comfortable with it, with what works. And so is Ben Johnson about what Caleb is good at. I also think the play action game is really getting going because there's some nice tie-in with the runs, but also because Caleb is getting used to, all right, I do this hard play action. Now I have to hit it in this soft spot, like in between two guys on a high-low or a big dig route or something like that. So it's not all perfect, but I can see that number kind of getting up to average. I think he's more of an average in that area. But why Caleb has moments of special is like you playing man coverage against him is kind of suicide because either his creation ability, his ability to find the one-on-one and make the hard throws, and also just like all, the scramble ability and all that. Because like when certain quarterbacks, it always feels like playing man is like, why would you ever do that? Like Lamar Jackson. It's like playing man coverage to me when the Ravens are rolling is like, why would you ever do that? Because he can make the hard throws and he can create and do all the running stuff.
No, that's really good analysis on Caleb Williams. And I think some of this stuff is receiver stats. And like I said, I do think their receivers are better man beaters than zone beaters anyways. I'm interested to see once they get like Colson Loveland ramped up, when they eventually get Luther Burden ramped up. I think Burden, I criticized him as like a prospect in his work against zone coverage, but I actually think just really, really small samples, obviously, because he hasn't played a ton as a rookie. I think he actually looks pretty good against zone coverage, which is nice to see, and you could tell that they're gonna push him on that stuff. That's why I liked him being drafted by this coaching staff, because they're gonna push him there. So Caleb will definitely be an interesting one to track. And just on the this is a receiver stat, I definitely think Trevor Lawrence being 15th, which is, obviously 15th is 15th, but 15th versus man and 28th versus zone, that is 100% a receiver stat here, because if you've listened to the show all year, I've highlighted Brian Thomas Jr.'s struggles versus zone coverage dating back to his rookie season, his prospect profile, and this is something that he's just got to get better at, especially when we're working zone coverage. We do have to be good over the middle of the field, and that's something that I think Trevor, from a ball placement perspective, obviously is he leaves a lot to be desired, but so does Brian Thomas Jr.'s working over the middle of the field. I think the good news is that Travis Hunter has shown a lot to me. Nate has shown a lot of growth from his week 1, week 2 film as a route runner is like, oh boy. I mean, we knew it was going to be a work in progress. I think he's really looking a lot more comfortable, which is good news. I think that will help some of the zone stuff. And also, in fairness to Trevor too, Hunter is their only wide receiver that doesn't have a double-digit drop rate on the season this year. Their only wide receiver that does not have a double-digit drop rate on the season, which is insane. Man.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's a good example of where zone coverage beating, like by a quarterback, receiver, and scheme, is really a lot about trust. And that's where, beating zone 2 is typically you have to throw over the middle, because just where the soft spots are of cover 3 and cover 2 and cover 4. It's bender routes, it's seams, it's digs. That's not an absolute, but just usually the more traditional ways. And also because when you have to beat zone, you have to throw it early. Those zones close, those holes close, those windows close. When people talk about NFL windows, man coverage is man coverage. It's kind of like you're reading leverage. Where is the help coming from? If it's 2-man, it's the safeties, so they play inside leverage. So you might hear the term trail technique. And then on a typical man coverage that's not a blitz, the DBs will play with outside leverage because the help is coming from the inside, robber or the hole player. So, all right, if it's man coverage, I know I could just throw it to this space because the help isn't there. Zone coverage, all right, I know I have to move this linebacker, but I have to throw it to a certain spot because the safety might be closing down on that. And sometimes the safety's closing down, and I have to look for that. And then the other safety might be going over the top. Well, it's like you're reading a zone, you're reading an area. So I think that's where trust in receivers comes up a lot. And why I'm saying all that is I can really tell with Trevor He's really not trusting a lot what's going on. When they do play zone, when they played the Seahawks, they actually had probably the best game plan on third down because I think they kind of knew what they were getting on third down. But I think sometimes when they play a team, Rams is probably a great example, is that like you play this team that does a lot of movement after a snap. And this is something Trevor can sometimes get locked in. I'm not saying his first read, but what he thinks is the pre-snap look. So he shortcuts things. And sometimes he's like, oh, shoot, I got to 3 here. And I actually should have just gone 1, 2, 3 or something of that sort. So I do think like long-winded way to say when you have a team that's getting all these illegal procedure penalties, illegal shift penalties, all these drops and everything, the zone is a little bit, and you have a quarterback that's maybe not trusting it all the way to an absolute T, like explains a lot here. like actually watching the Jags as we have our Joe DiMaggio streak of talking about the Jags. Like, let's continue it here with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, seriously. It's a great point about the trust and the timing with these guys. Like when you have a team that's so fully locked in versus zone coverage, quarterback and wide receivers, it's just like a beautiful thing. Everything is within the rhythm of the play. And that's just like, even if you hitch 1 second, and sometimes to me as the receiver bias person, I can be like, oh, this quarterback is like, he's late, like throw that thing, let it go. Sometimes it's the quarterback thinking like, do I fully trust this? And then if that half or quarter of a second can make all the difference between it being open and shut by the time, like, okay, the receiver is open, but by the time the pass arrives, then it's shut, or you got a receiver who's worried about this safety next to him, and it's we know that's definitely true. So it can be a cascading effect, really, that I think can be problematic when we look at this stuff. But
NFL receivers are smart. They know where they might get hit from. Like they know, and that's why it's commendable when some of the guys, it's like, man, that guy didn't, like Puka Nacua is so exciting to watch because CeeDee Lamb's another guy. They go over the middle and they're just like, yep. Like this is my job. Like, and I think that's just so incredible to watch because I could have done that. But sorry to kill the transition, but I think that's why it's fun to watch when, like you say, when a team is cooking against zone, that's the best offense. It's like, because man coverage is just like, all right, throw something deep. All right, you beat him. Crossing route. All right, he beat him. He beat him in a foot race, as opposed to zone, which is like the offense is rolling right now.
100%. So I know we're not going to talk about every single one of these guys on every single list, but I do, because like Jalen Hurts, that's been a long-standing thing. He's generally the Eagles have always been better versus man versus zone. I do just want to throw you the dart and Bo Nix one before we move on to zone coverage, just because I know you were said before we logged on we just watched this game. So any thoughts on either of those? You don't have to break them both down or anything, but any thoughts on either of those two guys? Because I know people are curious about those two quarterbacks specifically.
When talking about like anticipating and kind of trusting what you're seeing, like that's where this kind of crops up. And I think with these two, both of them, I think it's actually the same conversation where against man, if you're running like a trips concept, like a 3x1 concept, there's a lot of those concepts that the one is truly working on their own. We talk about this with X receivers all the time. Like this is why they have to win on this certain route tree. It's why it's a hard skill set to find. Is they're just on their own. They're isolated. But there's newer concepts that work in all conjunction. But I would say traditionally, and when I'm watching these offenses, that's why against man, sometimes they're just like, all right, man, take the X, so it just becomes one-on-one routes like that. That is not, it's why sometimes I'll knock some plays that people think I'm being unfair, but I just think those are more replaceable for a quarterback.
Sure.
As opposed to working against some of this other stuff. Not to say that you don't do it. Like every quarterback does it. It's just how much you lean on it. So I think that's where you play man against these guys, which also means blitzing against these guys sometimes. That means they heat up and it kind of like takes the fat out of their decision making. So it's just like, all right, man, throw it. Like, and as opposed to like zone, you have to let it marinate. You have to feel some things out. I think both of these quarterbacks struggle with that when they come off their first read. Like Bo Nix is watch the Broncos on second down, and I think you get the kind of encapsulation of what this offense is, good and bad. They run a lot of, and this is to kind of simplify things for Nix, is they run a lot of one side is a zone beater and one side is a one-on-one man beater, usually to Cortland Sutton. A lot of slants, outs, goes, isolated routes. Over and over and over. Yeah, I know I actually have to chart that. It's actually probably pretty easy for you because it's just like, well, Sutton's here.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
I know.
the X's.
Actually,
I love X receivers generally, but I definitely love because I'm like, all right, we can get through this quick. It's these
Easiest
move around
charting.
guys. I'm like, I gotta wait for the snap to fully come out before I log where he lined up. All right, the ball.
Yep.
All right, cool. Now he was in the slot.
Yep.
I just did our boy Alec
Is a
Pierce today, and I was like, this
there?
is easy. Just pop, play.
And
Yeah.
Steichen's offense too, which is old, like has old school kind of alignment stuff. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I was saying all that is that those plays are getting honed in on league wide, and especially with the Broncos. You know, when you have these tendencies, and this is why, you know, why training wheels can only go so far in an offense. Like, hey, just make it simple for them, get the ball out. This is an easy decision for them. Why over time defenses start just going, well, second down, here it comes. All right. And you see, especially against the Giants, they were getting teed off on because they run it 7-8 times in the game. And so, but that's why I would say even that, those simple plays, the zone is not being as good because the zone beater is kind of like weaning. So the stuff that does beat zone isn't as good as it was maybe in the past as well. So that's just kind of more of a schematic thing and stuff over time, why dropping back and reading the whole field becomes more of a skill for the high-end quarterbacks. And I think Dart is 4 games into his career, so it's kind of like whatever right now. But right now, he's kind of the same tier to me or archetype as Nix is as far as how they read the game.
Yeah, Nix is someone I really want to see another receiver emerge from there so that it's not just everything flows through the X. And I kind of want to test, like, all right, maybe back half of year 2, if it's a guy like I kind of have seen enough of the Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims stuff. Like those guys have their places, and I like what they do, but I just know they're not going to expand beyond.
I'm so
that.
glad this came out, by the way.
Yeah, I want to see like Pat Bryant, you know. So, anyways, continue.
Oh no, Pat Bryant. Okay, I'm so glad this came up. I actually meant to text you, but it was like, oh, we're about to start the show anyway, so I get to talk to you, and it's great. We're on air. Pat Bryant. I think the Sean Payton and the coaches are thinking the same thing you're thinking, because he got like 5-6 plays designed for him in the red zone. But what kept happening was the ball was batted down, it got blown up. But watching it back, I'm like, these are all designer plays to Pat Bryant. Like, so I'm so like, I actually meant to talk to you about that because it was just, that was something very apparent watching it back. There were so many gotta have it plays or designer plays, as I call them, that were going to Pat Bryant. Like, but it just, something happened in the way. Some nixification happened, or maybe just, the defense blew it up or something like that. But I think they are trying to get him going because I thought that was very telling to me as far as those juicy plays that they're going to one guy.
Yeah, their bye week is not until week 12. So, sometimes with rookies, it takes until after that bye. But his snaps have started to tick up. His opportunities haven't. But that's why I always say, like, you're never going to – and, like, no shade to these stats. Like, all of these stats have their place. But you're never going to get what you just said there, which is, like, conceptually, who are they setting up on plays by like first read targets or design targets or even just regular old targets per route run, stuff like that. Because there was a play and I posted this on my film burner account that
get a lot of action.
Yeah, sometimes it was Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze, where that was so clearly like a play that was designed for him to get a post route touchdown. DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift took 2 dudes to the flat, and like Joe Tooney, I think it was Joe Tooney, just got like walked back into his into Caleb Williams' lap, and it's like, all right, well, he's got to bail, and then that's it. But like that doesn't go down as a first read anything, but it's there, like, and that's supposed to be there. So yeah, that Pat Bryant note is a really good one because he's someone that I definitely could help these zone coverage numbers. And for Dart, just real quick, I just wish I wish there was somebody like in this offense to really trust, but they just don't have that. Yeah. So we'll see how that like kind of moves along. But he's they're trying, and he'll be good in fantasy no matter what. So if you're streaming him in fantasy, he'll be fine. But let's move to the guys who are better versus zone coverage. And this is like mostly good quarterbacks in this one. So these are guys that have double-digit gaps. They're much better versus zone than man. Patrick Mahomes is second versus zone coverage. He's 24th versus man coverage. So get ready to learn Rashee Rice double-digit targets every single week. Baker Mayfield, 7th versus zone coverage, 23rd versus man. Dak Prescott, he's 18th versus man coverage, but he's 4th versus zone. So he's actually, the gap is there, but he's still pretty good versus both.
Yeah.
Michael Penix, 13th versus zone, 31st versus man. That one's interesting to me. And then Mac Jones is 17th versus zone and 28th versus man. So I throw those list of guys at you. I don't know if we need to fully talk about like Mahomes, Mayfield, Dak. We kind of know what those offenses are. We know those guys are good.
Yeah.
But Penix, that one stood out to me, Nate.
That one's actually kind of like, I'm trying to have like a theory on it. Like, all right, because to me, it's like, all right, against man, throw it to Drake London, throw it to Bijan Robinson if he gets out. Usually, and I think maybe some of it, I don't know, because I'm actually just even thinking back. I would actually suggest, like, if I were just eye testing or just how I view Penix, is that he misses a lot of throws against zone. And maybe just has because that requires the stuff over the middle, which is his weak spot. His best stuff is outside and pushing the ball, which again is more, maybe it's more just the 50-50ness of those throws when you have London. I mean, I guess actually now I'm talking out loud, Drake London moving inside. Now they have Ray McCloud not even on the team anymore. Darnell Mooney was banged up. Maybe some of that was part of this as well, where it's like, hey, Penix's best throws to the outside are not being, going to the right spot, as far as like personnel wise. But I think that one's really interesting because I got to watch that more, like why that is. Like I remember Geno Smith a couple of years ago had one of the wildest man versus zone splits I've ever seen, like on third down. And then when you watch it was like, because every time they get man coverage, he throws a go ball to Lockett or DK. And if they don't come down with it, well, they're off the field, So and I think, so I'm curious if it's kind of the same thing when he gets man coverage, because that's actually really interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of these stats. They're the splits between like Drake London's production and expected production. All this stuff is like crazy high when Darnell Mooney doesn't play versus when he does. He goes from being like an elite top 5 fantasy receiver to just like a good fantasy starter when Mooney does or doesn't play. To me, I don't think I've been hesitant to even talk about him on the show because I actually don't think that's all that revelatory or interesting. Because it's a really shallow receiver core. When one guy misses, the other guy's just going to get all of the looks. Like there's no third receiver that they need to promote or anything like that. It's like, okay, of course the other guy goes down, the other guy's going to go. Yeah. Same thing, right? Yeah. That's why Pickens was a top 5 fantasy receiver when CeeDee Lamb didn't play. Like, here's a good example of some of the stats if you're watching, for us watching this right now, 8.5 targets per game when Darnell Mooney is healthy. In games he is inactive or limited, according to Underdog here, 14.8 targets. So, by the way, I would say though, the only thing I'd expand on that is like some of Penix's best games have been when he's just hyper targeting Drake London. So maybe we need to just do that more. Like sometimes I think this offense goes every 3 weeks or so, just forgets how smooth it all feels when we work everything through Drake London. So that's just something that I do think that Penix could maybe be better about taking those throws to London when they're open, but they're tighter. I think there's some of that still working.
NFL open.
Yes.
But seriously, that's part of quarterback play is when, and I've talked with you about this, and it's a term I've kind of like now I really like is put the ball in play. Like just give your guy a shot. Like, and I think that's what Daniel Jones is, where he's having so much success this year, is just like he's not having the plays where he just unplugs, like where he's actually like just getting rid of the ball, taking it, throwing it away, or just throwing it to the check down. And there's something to that, just getting rid of the ball. Also, probably Penix's lack of run threat. He did time well, but scrambling is never going to be a part of his game. Yeah. He wants to operate from the pocket, so maybe that's part of it too, where the lack of threat as a runner can kind of play into how teams play. And a guy like London, who I think ideally is that power slot that can win on the outside, that is a little easier to take away as far as kind of like, all right, and man, because where the help's coming from, like I mentioned before. So it kind of like you can run a robber coverage and you're essentially double teaming them. And unless Penix can get to his second read or his third read, which sometimes he's kind of one and then throw it away, kind of a quarterback, that I think sometimes that can have some limitations as well. But you also have Kyle Pitts on this team. I mean, and Kyle Pitts is looking good. So it's like, all right, if you're going man coverage, how many safeties can keep up with Kyle Pitts? So that's another thing too. So I'm with you. It's like this offense is brilliant in some ways. The run game is absolutely brilliant. Obviously statistically it's one of the best in the games, but just watching it schematically. But the passing game is just how it ties in, how they use their guys. It's fairly frustrating. So this one kind of is a nice kind of like indicativeness of what the whole offense feels like sometimes.
Yeah, fairly frustrating is very Falcons-ish this season. They also have crazy home road splits. There's a lot to dig into the Falcons, which we did like a few episodes ago, actually. So we won't do too much of that here. But real quick before we go to break, I'm just going to read these guys off. We'll break them down in the next segment because, spoiler alert, there's a lot of crossover here. These are the guys who are what I call ballers versus both. They're great against man. They're top 10 in man coverage. They're top 10 versus zone coverage. Lamar Jackson, 6th versus man, 3rd versus zone. Jordan Love, 9th versus man, 5th versus zone. Drake May, that's right. Take another Drake May victory lap. 6th versus man, 7th versus zone. Daniel Jones, 4th versus man, 9th versus zone, just like we all expected. And Jared Goff, 5th versus man, 10th versus zone. So again, Nate, we'll break those guys down actually in the next segment because, like I said, I believe there's full crossover. All except one of those names we will talk about in the ballers versus both for pressured versus non-pressured. But we are going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about quarterbacks who are great versus when they get pressure versus dropbacks when they're not pressured, and a lot of takeaways from those lists. We'll get into that right after this. All right, we are back. We're going to dive into now quarterbacks who have large gaps between their performance when they're pressured versus dropbacks when they're not under pressure. Same methodology here in terms of EPA per dropback, adjusted yards per attempt, combined into one metric, the gap between the two. You know the whole deal. You just watch the first segment. You just listen to the first segment. You know what I'm talking about here. All right, let's talk about the quarterbacks who are weirdly much better when they're under pressure, or at least more efficient when they're under pressure as passers. I also excluded guys who were bad in both, if that makes sense. Again, like if there was a big gap, like, oh, well, they're much better when they're under pressure, but it's still terrible. We threw those guys out of the sample here. So we've got 4 quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler is 10th in these combined metrics when he's under pressure. He's 32nd when he does not face any pressure. Bryce Young is 15th under pressure, 33rd when not pressured. Jaden Daniels, 6th under pressure, 22nd when not pressured. And then Kyler Murray, 15th under pressure and 25th with no pressure. Weird list, Nate, but I'm going to throw this theory at you. This to me looks like some of the improv merchants in a weird way. Like,
yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was my first takeaway when I saw those 4 guys.
That was my takeaway too. Jaden Daniels is probably the most explainable one here, the easiest one to explain. He is really good at scrambling and really good at running. I will say he's hurt right now, but one defenses have started to figure out, and Jaden has to really improve on this, is that when he does get moved off his launch point and he does start to run, he's got to throw once in a while. Like he just opts to run. He scrambles to run every single time, like seriously every single time. So and I noticed that even defenses that aren't that great, like the Cowboys, their defenders just sprinted straight at him. Like they didn't go arms up, and they didn't get juked out of their shoes. They just ran at him and made him start keep running, I guess is a good way to put it. So that's just something I just kind of keep my eye on once he comes back. And under no pressure, Commanders passing game, I mean, look who's playing receiver and catching balls right now. So it's like they're kind of getting a pass for me a little bit in some regard.
Totally.
Like I did think they would take a step back this year, but some of this has just been kind of like, I mean, what do you want them to do? Like the number 1 receiver against the Cowboys was Zach Ertz. You can't have him be the primary pass catcher in 2025. So him, they're just a unique team right now. They're kind of going through the season through hell. Rattler is interesting because I thought a lot of his decision-making has been pretty good when he's not pressured, when he's just sitting in a nice pocket. And I think maybe, now that I think about it, he does try some stuff as well. Like that's what something is good and bad. He needed to kind of create more explosive plays. I'm still super high on him because it's like, I think a lot of his processing has been good. Hasn't really been trapped by anything where I'm like, oh, they got you there with that coverage, or they got you there with that. Like, why'd you throw it to that? It's been a lot of oh, okay, I see how you got caught there, or I see why'd you try that throw. So him being good under pressure is actually more encouraging to me than anything, because I actually thought that would maybe be a little lower because, you know, he's not the biggest guy. He's got balls. He's got cojones. Like, he's willing to try some stuff. So like, I'm still super high on Rattler, even though he had, you know, if you look at the box score, a lesser game because of some of the turnovers.
I was going to say, I wonder if these would have been a little bit less stark for Rattler if we did this last week. Because last week was the one where last week was the game, the first one all season where I felt like, all right, he's really trying to write some checks that maybe his bank account cannot fully fund here.
Yeah, they went. It was like after the first quarter and a half, he just kind of said F it, like, and was just trying some stuff, which was great. Like, he needs to have more games like that, but I think it's been so encouraging about him long term is that he showed he can be the safer, efficient player, and also he can actually run a little bit better than I give him credit for. Like, I actually think they do some design runs and scrambles for him that I actually think he's a little bit better, a better athlete, and a better creator than maybe I even gave him credit for. His arm talent's undeniable. The first touchdown he hit at Chris Olave was an absolutely gorgeous throw, an unbelievable decision, a hard, like 5-7 guys in the league will do that on in a season, you know, that type of throw. So really encouraging stuff. The Saints fascinate me. I know we talk about them a ton. Bryce Young kind of like makes a little sense because his best trait is creation. It's just that the no pressure stuff is supposed to be his other best trait. You know, he's supposed to be a supreme distributor and all that. So that's kind of like I think if you watch it, it's what you see. But it's also kind of like why I've been disappointed with him as a pro so far. It's just that I thought he'd be better in structure, where it is 1, 2, 3 ball out, 1, 2, 3 able to do those, where I feel like everything has to be pristine for him to kind of try some stuff right now.
He's such a difficult quarterback for me to figure out because, this is a narrative in the fantasy streets this week. They're like, oh, Andy Dalton's going to come in here and like make this off. Like, he's going to make Terra McMillan go. And I kind of don't agree with that, just because this offense isn't, from a protection standpoint, isn't really set up right now. Their run game, obviously, as we talked about last week, kicks ass, and their offensive line's great in the run game. I think from a pass protection standpoint, the offensive line is much more hit or miss. And Bryce does make up for that at times with some of his work under pressure. Dalton is not giving you that. So I've been a little bit suspicious of the narrative that Dalton's going to come in here and make the thing look better, because Andy Dalton's like 37 years old and you know, he is what he is at this point. Yeah. So come on,
right.
Like, what are we talking about here? But Bryce Young does, it makes a little bit sense that he falls in this list. Let's talk about the guys who are much better when they're not pressured, because these are some big name quarterbacks and some interesting ones here. So again, quarterbacks who are much better when not pressured. These are guys with double-digit gaps in the rankings. Jordan Love, number 1 when not pressured this season, but 27th when he is under pressure. CJ Stroud, 10th when not pressured, 31st under pressure. Sense. Yeah, if you watch the Texans offense, we'll also add some context in terms of guys that have high pressure rates here when we talk about these guys. But Jared Goff, 4th when not pressured, 22nd under pressure. That's been his whole career. Josh Allen, 5th when not pressured, 20th under pressure. Mac Jones, 14th no pressure, 27th under pressure. Caleb Williams, 12th when not pressured and 21st when under pressure. I'm technically cheating with the final name here, Aaron Rodgers, because his gap is not as big, but it still averages out to 12th, no pressure, 21st under pressure. So a little bit of a cheating answer because it's the average here. So he's like got a 9-point gap, but whatever, who cares? It's the same average rankings as Caleb Williams. And that's another one we just talked about last week too.
Yeah, and like almost all of these are kind of explainable, I think. Like Love, Stroud, and I would say Caleb kind of fall in the same bucket for me. Those are quarterbacks that try stuff. So when they're under pressure, they can have some bad crop up, like, because pressure to them is not, oh, I immediately check it down and I immediately throw it away or anything. It's 3 guys, 4 better or worse. I say better. They get pressure and they go, okay, I'm going to pressure you. So stuff can happen. When they kind of try stuff, and I know some people maybe not think of Stroud like that, but that's why Stroud can. When he's rolling, it can be really fun and exciting quarterback because he's going to push the ball. So those guys explain to me, Jared Goff, this is going to be his thing forever. When he's not pressured, he's one of the best operators in the league. I love watching Goff rip throws over the middle when he's really feeling it. Under pressure, he's not a creator. He gets moved off his spot. It all comes unraveled. I think everybody knows that. Josh Allen, kind of the same thing with Love, Stroud, and Caleb. he's going to try stuff. He's going to push the ball. So he can get punished when he's moving backwards or he's, throwing off platform, even though I think over time leads to good stuff. It like can in these sample sizes or just, unfavorable circumstances or, ecosystems right now can kind of drop off for him. Mac Jones, same thing as Goff. So I kind of, same kind of thing. No pressure. Yep. Boop, 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 throwing BBs. Under pressure. Totally. Power down because of some of the trait stuff that he has. Wow. I actually was able to nail all of them. Because those are like the two buckets to me with, how they deal with pressure. Some guys just are not creators in that sense. And some guys they can over small sample size or a couple games get really punished when they do try to get into too much creation mode.
Yeah, and I think the actionable takeaway there from like the 49ers perspective is that when Purdy gets back, it brings just a different ceiling to the offense.
Correct.
Because he is a risk taker, not necessarily. I mean, he can kind of be gunslingerish under pressure, but he's definitely like he'll scramble around, he'll try to make things happen. Whereas, it's just like you said with Mac Jones, that's perfect. Just power down when the pressure comes in. Rodgers, and by the way, this also you can use this information from a fantasy standpoint, if you're like streaming quarterbacks like last week with Rodgers, well, okay, the Bengals are not going to get a lot of pressure on you because their pass rush stinks. So he can have like a vintage Rodgers performance. Packers this week, I don't know about that. Right. So that's sort of how you can use this information. And I think with Jordan Love, his pressure rate is actually trending down in terms of his dropbacks under pressure coming out of the bye week. And I think it's because they're getting a little bit healthier along the offensive line, which was a problem to start this year. So that's an offense I watch and I really feel good about where they're headed. I love the way Romeo Doubs is playing right now. I think Golden obviously is he going to be a high targeted player that we want for fantasy? Maybe not, but he really impacts the offense. And this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers slow defense, I think he can rip off a couple of big plays. Tucker Kraft is a great answer for them under pressure. That's another thing too. I think for Love, just get the ball in the flats to Tucker Kraft. That's a nice answer that when he takes the answer versus pressure as opposed to the push it is available for him. Whereas for a guy like CJ Stroud, and I think sometimes Josh Allen too, I don't know that there's always an answer built in for pressure right now for these guys. A little bit more for Josh because they have some guys in the short area, but that's something that Stroud, like the routes are just so deep. And we talked about this yesterday, so we don't have to get too deep into it, but that's something that I think I'm curious what your thoughts are in terms of offenses here that have good answers versus pressure versus guys that have good answers, but they're just not taking them.
It's a great point with the Packers. The Packers have one of the most well-designed offenses in football. Every aspect of it, the run game, the routes, the mode of attack. But the offensive the protection plan is always really sound. And so why that comes up is that they'll use chip help in unique ways. Like they really have expanded how they use chips and what plays they use chips on. And why that matters is that's who the tight end usually is, the running back. Sometimes they use receivers to do it, but that's Tucker Kraft. They'll do kind of an extended chip and then release late and release a little more depth than they traditionally are. So it's just kind of I agree with you. I'm still high on the Packers. I watched that game back against the Cardinals, and it was one of those where it's like, oh, you guys are so close. Like they're so close to kind of popping as an offense, like and really just having these games right now. They have a high floor offense because of some of it can be frustrating. A lot of second down runs, a lot of that. But they're living right now on third down, which is a good thing that they can do that with Jordan Love in this passing game. But I think their first and second down offense is about to, and we're going to get those shot plays and the big plays on like that we expect out of this offense a little more consistently. They're close. They're a team that's really close. Like I upon rewatch, I'm kind of glad I watched them on Monday because I was like, oh yeah, Packers, you're still a contender. Like it's just like a lot of I know these games have been ugly and they're winning close games, but they're very close to really, really popping. So that's just a part of it. But a great aspect about Stroud too, and just the frustrations that Texas offense is because of the protection plan or the lack of just thoughtfulness that goes into this offense right now. It's very, very cookie cutter, kind of the slow discussion again, but just a different version of the offense. A different offense, but a less exciting one. God. So it's just like, it's unbelievable. I know. And that's like even yesterday our discussion, I was just kind of like, man, I feel like I'm saying the same stuff I've been saying for 2 years now. And I'm like, but it's true. It's like, I don't have to change what I'm saying because it's just, the definition of insanity. But no, that's a great point though, is that he doesn't have a lot of safety valves, or when that he does throw hot, the defenses have a good answer for it. Like there's a instance where he tried to throw hot and signal hot to Nico Collins, and the Seahawks had a hot dropper into it. And that just shows that they're always just, we talked about one page behind. They're just one page behind of whatever defenses are doing to them. So that's a kind of a good stat of what's going on with the Texans.
All right, let's talk about the ballers no matter what. This is, again, similar to the ballers versus both coverages. These are the ballers no matter the situation. Again, it's 5 guys. Sam Darnold, just like we all thought, 9th when under pressure, 5th when no pressure. Lamar Jackson, 3rd under pressure, 2nd when there's no pressure. Drake May, once again, 6th under pressure, 5th when no pressure. Matthew Stafford, 8th under pressure, 9th not pressured. Daniel Jones, 2nd under pressure, 9th no pressure. So just if you're keeping track at home, Jordan Love and Jared Goff were in the ballers versus both. They leave this list, but Sam Darnold comes in, Matthew Stafford comes in. So once again, we're swapping Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford here on the list. I think that actually is really indicative of why the Rams quite literally swapped Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. But okay, so when we look at those two lists, the ballers versus both the ballers, no matter what in terms of pressure, what stands out to you versus like, oh, this is sustainable? In Lamar, obviously, Matthew Stafford, we know, but like,
yes,
what do you think is sustainable here from some of the more surprising ones?
May's sustainable. It's buy everything. I'm rewatching him too. It's just like, yeah, this makes sense because he's so athletic. He's such a good thrower on the move. Actually, that's really the thing with all these guys. They're all good off-platform throwers. Daniel Jones, I would say in the past, has been good on bootlegs, which are movement throws and everything. So it's actually maybe not something, because I've always thought he wilted under pressure. Like it just was one of those quarterbacks that just boom, their brain pops. I think that's more of just how much better he looks right now. And I think it's some of the offensive ecosystem. But again, we talk about well-designed stuff. I think that's sustainable. Like I don't think he's gonna be second the rest of the year, but more of like 9th and 9th, or something like that, 8th and 8th and everything, but like where it just kind of like evens out. But I do think that's sustainable because this offense is really good. Like, I mean, it's just one of these things where it's like, there's no shoe dropping. Like, do I think, again, is it going to be one of the best offenses we've seen since the new millennium? I don't know, maybe at this point, but no, I do at the very least think it's a top 5 offense, and it has a good line, good answers for him, like a good run game. Yeah. So I think the ecosystem kind of, good protection plan. All these teams, maybe not so. I mean, May is just kind of his own freaky self, but like Darnold, has a good protection plan around him. That's why it's helped it out. A lot of bootleg throws, a lot of movement throws, a lot of plays he has the answers to the test. So I actually think that's kind of the peak of what he can be at, because he still has those moments like he had against the Texans where he took the sack. But overall, he's been just getting rid of the ball. So I do think that is sustainable because of what he is doing. So I think really all of these are, even if they just come down maybe a little bit, because I just think what they are or what the offenses are, kind of good stuff going on right now.
Yeah, there's no rug pull, I think, waiting for the Seahawks. Could Sam Darnold have one of his like unplug the didn't we say this yesterday on 301? Like, he unplugs for just a minute, and he had a couple of plays like that against the Texans. I mean, like, why are we let's get rid of that football when we're in the end zone, buddy. But I mean, again, it's just that those are going to be fewer and far in between because this offense is so buttoned up. I mean, Daniel Jones, you said it, there's an answer on every single play. And there's not with Dayball's offense, it's like, no, there's a first read. Throw to the first read. That's it. Like, exactly. Just first read. Throw to the first read. And like, if you don't do that, you're going to come to the sideline and I'm going to have my red face. I'm going to be mad at you. But with Steichen's offense, it's like, okay, well, if that's not there, get here. Like, they're just trust where I'm going to show you to go. Like, it's just follow the yellow brick road, Daniel, and you'll get to the land of Oz. That's literally every single play is like that for him here.
Absolutely. All these offenses have heavy check kill systems, alert systems, where they get into pristine, either the perfect play or the better play too. So these offenses, Lamar's his own thing and May's kind of his own thing, but McDaniels does a nice job of this too, where it's like maybe not the best play you've ever seen, but it's like, it's not a play where it's like, oh, they're screwed. Like, because all these quarterbacks and these offenses can handle kind of a high verbiage and kind of maybe that next step kind of layers to their offenses too. So that's something that's worth noting.
Yeah, and this is where the takeaway from an actionable standpoint, from a fantasy standpoint, is these offenses. These are the ones where when we're getting into bye week hell, which we're in a hellacious bye week right now, start looking at like the ancillary players here if you're desperate, because things are clicking to such a good point, and they have those alerts and they have those answers.
Yep.
Alec Pierce with the Colts, Kayshon Boutte with the Patriots, because on mid to bad offenses, they don't get to the X receiver and do all that cool stuff because they're keeping it to that first read and yada yada. But yeah, all right, well we can get backside into the progression because there's so many good answers here, so we can access those players. And you've seen that with Pierce, you've seen it with Boutte. It's sporadic. It's not going to be 10 fantasy points every single week. Guess what? Nobody's like that at the receiver position. So that's the actionable takeaway for me. And I'm certainly curious if the Ravens can get somebody to emerge there, the Seahawks as well. Obviously the Rams are the Rams. So that's the actionable takeaway, but really good instructive list of players, I think, in terms of the pressured versus non-pressured ones. That was a good one to break down there. All right. We are going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about an interesting quarterback related team with the Minnesota Vikings going to Los Angeles to play the Chargers for Thursday Night Football. We'll get into that right after this. All right, we are back. Let's talk Vikings at Chargers. 44.5 point total here on Thursday night. Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, the face that Nate just made there says it all. This is an interesting game. I honestly, I'm looking at this game on paper, Nate. I feel like not that I'm saying we've gotten everything right from a Thursday Night Football perspective, because we have not, I have not, nobody ever does. It's football. It's unpredictable. This game, I think, is the hardest one to like pin down, like Thursday night slate so far. Maybe I'm really not sure like how this one goes. Or there's the Carson Wentz of it all. Is this the Carson Wentz last start? JJ McCarthy, they said they would have let him. He would have started if it was Sunday, but it's not. I don't know. Just so much peculiarness in this game here. When I throw this one at you, what's your first thought?
Oh, I know. I was, God, anything going on with Carson Wentz is like my first thought, because I'm like, oh no. Because I mean, really
enough already.
That's really the big takeaway with all of it. Like my first thought too is also like, all right, Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz. Okay. There's going to be some highs where he chucks up to Justin Jefferson. But also going against a Minter defense, and what the Chargers have been weak against so far this year is you can run on them, which you saw last week. You've seen a few weeks actually in a row where teams can run on them. Yes, they've played some good run games, but that is something where I was like, oh, Jordan Mason. Oh no, Jordan Mason's hurt. Okay. I'm just like, all right, so who's going to run the ball? Who's going to actually get these? Like, because that's like, are you going to actually throw it? And because if you throw it against this defense, they're actually really good against the pass, the Chargers defense. So it's going to be one of these. Are we going to get another one of these games where I'm watching it and pulling my hair out, and the commentators are kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know. They're kind of like, oh, well, Kirk Herbstreit's not going to do that. So I think frustration is the first thing that comes to mind. The other side of the ball, Herbert, he's had success against this Brian Flores defense in the past. There was a game 2 years ago they played early in the season, and they just dropped back over and over. No play action, no nothing. And Herbert was just dialing up passes, just chucking it all over the yard. So he knows how to – that's kind of how you have to get after this Vikings defense. The Eagles had some success with under center, play action, amongst other things, some broken plays and stuff. I think Herbert is going to be able to push the ball, have some high highs, as long as he can stay upright. But if the Vikings can run the ball, and I think they can against this Chargers defense, then it's going to be kind of one of those things where you might be chasing points. You might be kind of how that, maybe not to the extent the Colts game last week, but really one of those things where he is going to be chucking it all over the yard, because even though the Vikings run defense is weak, sorry, I keep going because I'm just having new thoughts on it. Even though the Vikings run defense is weak, I think that's the best way to beat a Flores defenses. Just ping grenades and just launch it. And I think that's where Herbert and this Chargers offense, that's the strength of their team anyways.
Yeah, we need to get back to some of those Ladd McConkey intermediate zone coverage plays. QJ has been really good with that this year as well. So I think those two guys are going to be critical in this matchup. If we can beat those zone coverage intermediate routes, things like that, that's what they need. I think it was like week 1 or week 2, No, week 2 against the Raiders. There was a lot of plays where Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey are lined up on the same side of the field, and it's who's going to bite on what. Are you going to get sucked into the Ladd McConkey like intermediate outbreakers, some of those big plays that they're trying, or are you going to come down in zone coverage and kind of defend the flat with Keenan Allen there? Because otherwise it'll just be pop, 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 little pass all game long. And so that's kind of the pick your poison with this team when it's operating at full strength. I also think the Chargers could actually come. Famous last words, could come out of this game a little bit better from a pressure department. Daniel Popper, we're showing on the screen right now, has the stat that he's been hit 62 times this season as Justin Herbert, most in the league. Only one other quarterback, which is Cam Ward's been hit more than 44 times this year. So not the bucket we want Herbert into. So yeah, like I said, famous last words, but Joe Alt might be back this week. The Vikings pass rush is kind of whatever. It's not like they necessarily. It's hit or miss in my opinion. Van Ginkel, it looks like he's not going to play in this game, so that's something there as well. So I feel like the Chargers. I mean, the Vikings defense is always going to make stuff hard on you. The Chargers have their deficiencies on offense, but I could see how they match up well versus this defense.
Yeah, both teams can run the ball, but the thing is, neither team is kind of made up to run the ball right now because of injuries. So it's the funny thing is that's the weaknesses of both of these defenses. It might be a Justin Herbert rushing yard game or Carson Wentz rushing yard game if you're looking at props, because that's also a way to get for these defenses as well. That's one of my favorite ones, man. Quarterback over
Carson Wentz rushing props. Oh my god!
Yeah, I was trying to find it as I was talking here. I'm trying to click around and find it, but that's one that I might keep my eye on. Because that's what you can do against the Chargers defense week in, week out, because of just how they play coverages and how many eyeballs they have on routes and stuff. Man, I almost want to do over an interception for Carson Wentz. Like, if those are the type of things I'm looking at for this game. But it's like, that's the thing is why it's so hard to go, oh yeah, this is how they should do it. Like, this is what they should do, is because it's like, oh yeah, you should just chuck it on this against this defense. Are you really going to like try and block up Brian Flores looks like with this offensive line, who even the starters for the Chargers offensive line can't block, though the guys that are actually been healthy, Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson and stuff. So those are the ones that I'm just like, I'm feeling pessimistic about some of the plans here. Yeah, over a half interception for Carson Wentz is minus 135. I feel like that's like, yeah, like a one that worth buying the juice on because of how I feel like him throwing the ball like several times in this game. Like, there's something bad's gonna happen.
Well, he was the quarterback with the biggest gap between his man and zone coverage splits. I just didn't want to talk about him because we were going to talk about him anyways, and we don't need to break down.
He was bad against zone,
but he was good against zone, bad against man, which I think is interesting given this kind of offensive setup. But it's a team with a lot of answers, obviously in the pass game design perspective, and because they've got Addison back, they definitely have a lot of answers. I think Addison's a really good zone beater. So, but anyways. Yeah, I think from the Vikings backfield perspective, unfortunately, we don't have enough information right now because they activated Aaron Jones off of IR, which was nice to see because it'd been like complete radio silence, nothing on Aaron Jones. And he might not play in this game, but theoretically, like the backs that have stung the Chargers have been guys that can get to the perimeter on them. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor can do anything he wants, but think about like the Bill Krosky-Merritt breakout game when the Commanders win. It was just getting to the edge. So obviously, I think Jordan Mason is much more of like a power back. I think he's still a starter in this matchup, even if Aaron Jones comes back, because I mean, he's an older player off of an IR stint, but theoretically, Jones's speed to the edge on some of those like outside zone runs would be how you could attack this Chargers defense.
No, it absolutely is. It's the Chargers are such a funny defense. It's because like they know what your number one is. So like it might be a big Addison week 2, but running the ball on them too is that as long as you take care of Tierra Tart, you can kind of have your way with what they want. Mm-hmm. Like, the Colts last week, it was zone, which is a great call. They got on with trap plays as well. The Vikings don't really run trap plays. They are a zone duo type of team, where it's like Jordan Mason's probably, he's better on, actually he's pretty good on both of those runs, just kind of offhand, thinking on that. So it's just one of these things where it's like, I know what they can do. Are they able to do it? I'm like, it's just like, that's what's so frustrating about both of these teams and both of the offenses. It's like, I don't fully trust the O line and like certain aspects of their situations right now. For one is Carson Wentz, but no, that's a great point. Khalil Mack being back can maybe set the edge, but Denzel Perryman, who's supposed to be better against the run, I thought the Chargers linebackers were pretty weak last week against the Colts. So that's something too, is that like, all right, are they able to be gettable? So like the Jones thing, or even whoever's just running the ball for the Vikings.
Any other real quick props you have to give out and before we go, or is that
over
this is a weird
75
one?
yards?
There's not a lot up. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, there's not. Over 75 yards for Jordan Addison. It's an alt line. It's plus 200. That was another one I kind of came across that was like, I think is interesting because again, Mentor is such a good coach. He knows to take away Jefferson. All right. So maybe secondary options. I didn't see any, I didn't look for a Hawkinson one. But if you are a little bullish on Hawkinson, maybe something like that as well. It feels like a secondary target type of day for the Vikings offense when they do throw the ball, but they can run it if they just want to do that.
Well, Addison's been cooking, so I like that one. He's a big value in drafts after people did not want to take him because of the suspension. But Nate, this has been great. Appreciate you, buddy. This was a ton of quarterback information, so I'm hoping you felt in your wheelhouse, and I know that people really enjoyed it. But we're going to say goodbye to Nate. He'll be back next week. Make sure you subscribe to Football 301 wherever you get your podcasts. Nate and I had a good cathartic episode with the Houston Texans complaining about that and buying some playoff teams. And also he's got a preview episode coming out tomorrow with Charles. So make sure you're dialed into that. In the meantime, we're going to take our final break. When we come back, Joel Smyth joins the show to give us the 5 players who have some buzz building. We'll get into it right after this. All right, welcome to Buzz is Building with Joel Smyth. Every Wednesday, Joel joins us for the last block of the show here to provide 5 players with some buzz that you need to keep an eye on heading into each and every week. Joel, it's week 8, buddy. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Yeah, doing great.
I'm trying to, survive. Week 8, it's the middle of the season. I'm ready, to no more 10 p.m. Eastern games. How about that? Then I'll be feeling a lot better. I'm still trying to catch up on the sleep, but nobody cares about that, Joel. Literally nobody cares about my sleep schedule. What they do care about is these 5 players we have to highlight, including 2 in the first ones that we're going to look at that are actually playing on Thursday night. So very topical of you to throw these ones in here. Let's start with your first player where we've got some buzz building.
I try my best, and this is actually a good Thursday night football game, so I love that. Between Chargers and Vikings, first one, in terms of buzz, we all know who it is. Oronde Gadsden, and that usage is up consistently throughout this season. Every single week, those routes have gone up, and it's more important for him when we're talking about route share because of 2 different things. One, when we're talking about the percentage of routes, well, the Chargers are passing a ton, so that means more routes. These last 3 weeks, he has the 4th most routes among tight end. And then that second thing is his yards per route this year. Just his efficiency overall is tight end 3 right now. So we're looking at the yards per route for tight end on the year. It's Dalton Kincaid, number 1, who's been amazing, but, the Bills still don't play him a ton. And then number 2 is Tyler Warren. Gadsden is right behind those 2 guys. So he's looking great recently.
Man, he looks incredible on the field, too. He looks like he really belongs. He is, for people who are not familiar with him, he's a former wide receiver convert over into playing tight end as a collegiate prospect, and he put up a ton of production, so he was somebody that was kind of on the radar because of that. And there was, talk about buzz building, Joel. There's been buzz building on this guy basically since, Chargers training camp. I know Jim Harbaugh is the confidence king. He gasses everybody up, but they were definitely hyping him up in the offseason, talking about how excited they were. And I mean, it's not even just like, well, who else are they going to play? He's completely just blown past. You mentioned the routes. He's completely blown past the veterans on this team. And I mean, that's saying something considering they need some reliability. They need more protection. They're saying, forget that. We're not worried about tight ends blocking. We're trying to get this guy out in the route.
Yeah, which is even better. I live in Los Angeles now, was at the Chargers facility during their training camp or next to it. So I heard it firsthand. I was like, all right, I got to pick up this guy in Dynasty, and he's making me happy now. When we're looking, even though at his college, you were talking about a receiver, He had the second most receiving yards as technically a tight end then, even though he's a receiver. But even again, we're looking at the names in terms of those power four tight ends. The only guys that are above them the past few years or past 10 years is like Bowers, Mark Andrews, Tyler Warren last year. So this isn't like some nobody, even though he was drafted later, and he's not some like 7 or 8 year vet where we're just like, oh, he had one good week, now we had to pick him up. Like, this is a rookie that has some real ceiling potential.
And I think there's some staying power here, especially we'll talk in just a second, like what are we doing with him in terms of rankings this week. But just because you mentioned Dynasty, this Chargers team is quietly really loaded for the future if you're optimistic about their young players, because obviously Ladd is a second-year player. QJ is still on his rookie contract. Keenan Allen probably a one-year guy, but like they drafted Keandre Lambert-Smith, who flashed in the preseason. Trey Harris, I thought when he started for QJ against the Dolphins, didn't put up a lot of production, but I thought on film looked really, really impressive. Like he was the guy they were gassing up for kind of blocking his ass off. I can confirm he was really blocking dudes in that game. So quietly, like this is an ecosystem, Gadsden included, that I think is interesting for the long haul. But for this week, Joel, rankings wise, where are you slotting Gadsden among tight ends?
I would say he's a lower end tight end one just because it is a really hard matchup. He's still, I would say, that fourth option. So the Chargers are great in terms of passing offense, but tough matchup overall. He is tight end 9 on the year after that big game in terms of points per game. So he's still, already a tight end 1. I would keep him there. There's not too many great options at the tight end position. So if you have like one of those clear top guys, obviously you're not like benching a Tucker Kraft even or somebody like that. But if you're deciding between him and like Kelsey or like other guys that were off the waivers like Fan and those like the other waiver players, I wouldn't play them over a guy like Gadsden.
Yeah, I'm looking at my rankings. That's exactly kind of where I have him, is that like tight end 7 to 9 range where, yeah, Tyler Warren, Jake Ferguson, like Tucker Kraft, people know the names, but Zach Ertz, Travis Kelsey, the kind of old reliable guys. I mean, there's a floor there. I do think Kelsey's in a pretty good spot against Washington this week, and obviously Zach Ertz in that same game. But I do think that he makes sense if you want to go with that young, exciting thing. I definitely think there's some potential here for Gadsden to pop off on Thursday night. But let's stick on Thursday Night Football for your second Buzz building player.
Yeah, basically sticking with Jordan Addison, like you guys are talking about. I was doing my rankings on yesterday. Yeah, that was yesterday. Monday night, Tuesday morning rankings, and the automatic consensus that popped up for Addison was wide receiver 27. And I was like, why is Addison the wide receiver 27? Because right now, he is wide receiver 9 in points per game on the year. And I think people don't realize how good of a situation he's in just because we think of like, the Vikings offense, Carson Wentz is in there. It's not the greatest. But in terms of his targets, his routes, his red zone usage, all that is up there. Right now, in terms of targets per game, since he's returned, he's number 9 among receivers. He is second to Justin Jefferson in terms of routes. So he's out there constantly running routes. They're constantly throwing the ball. And that red zone passing rate is always so good in this O'Connell offense. It's why Addison, even though he's not that like 6'5" X receiver, he's going out there and scoring a ton of touchdowns his first year, his second year. I don't think the 1 touchdown every 3 games is going to be the best case scenario. That's the worst case scenario, I would say, for Addison is 1 every 3 games, just looking at the past 2 years and how he's used down there. Like Minnesota, their passing rate, 70% inside that red zone area. The next best is 65%.
Yeah, wow. I did not realize they were throwing the ball there. Yeah, he has 4 red zone targets against zone coverage this year, does Jordan Addison. And in terms of yards per route against zone coverage, we were talking about the zone versus man splits with Nate earlier. And I mentioned Carson Wentz was not one of the ones we broke down because we get it. But a lot of that is because of the pass catchers, why he's so good against zone coverage. Jordan Addison is 5th in yards per route against zone coverage. Justin Jefferson is 3rd. This is just one of those answers, man, where like there's always – I mean, it's one of those offenses where there's always an answer. And because teams do so much to take Justin Jefferson away, they said this years ago when they drafted Jordan Addison. He's always going to have these easy coverage looks. He's going to get the easiest looks in the league. Kevin O'Connell said that, and we're still seeing it. And I think Addison's gotten better as an individual player. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking at consensus rankings now. Wide receiver 27. I'm going to have him closer to like wide receiver 15, 16, 17. Like, who do you think is a more confident start this week between like Ladd McConkey or Jordan Addison in the same game?
Oh, I would say Addison. Yeah. I would take the wide receiver 2 on this team versus dealing with all 3 receivers there with Ladd, even though he's been better recently, obviously. But I still would be more confident when you take in the defenses, especially in Addison. Like, he's missed the first 3 games this year. He only has 1 touchdown. He is still the 6th best receiver in terms of touchdowns since he's entered the league. So his first 2 years, and he's already had 20 touchdowns. There's not many other guys that are catching more than him because of that red zone usage. And I think a lot of people like Wentz. I'm not advocating for Wentz. I don't think he's a great quarterback. But in fantasy, when we're talking just fantasy football, a lot of times what's most important is just who they're throwing to. Because a lot of these backup quarterbacks come in, they throw a lot to the tight end or the running back, those check downs, or maybe a little bit more to those backup receivers that they've been playing with. Joe Flacco, what we saw last week, incredible. Carson Wentz, so far this year, over 70% of his passes have gone to JJ, Addison, and Hawkinson this year. So he's at least throwing to the right guys.
We love the backups who come in and they just know the assignment. It's the same thing with Flacco that we talked about last week. I saw you put the tweet out too after that Thursday night game. Well, like 70% of the passes went to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's like, come in here, find the guys, pummel them with footballs. And when your time is done, Flacco's time's not going to be done until Burrow gets back. But Wentz, this might be it. Just get those guys to football and get out. Like, that's it. That's all we're asking for here. Last one here real quick. Jordan Addison or George Pickens this week? Who do you think is in a better spot?
Okay. I would go Pickens there. I love Pickens so much. Like, just this year mainly, but I've loved Pickens all season. I can't go away from him.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's an interesting matchup. We'll break down more tomorrow with Justin Boone with the potential which corner is going to be covering him versus CeeDee Lamb, the whole deal there. But all right, let's get to the third buzz is building player.
Going to go to New York and Cincinnati here with Justin Fields potentially missing this game. We could get more Tyrod Taylor. And in terms of yards per route for Garrett Wilson specifically, we'll use him because he's just that biggest fantasy guy. His yards per route is actually the same with Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor. The biggest difference is just that pass rate. Because when New York has Tyrod Taylor on the field, they're number 1 in the NFL in pass plays. Where when Fields is on the field, they're 29th. So they're running, no matter the game script, really, the Jets, when they have Fields, running the ball a ton. But when Tyrod is out there, they just kind of go with the game script and let him throw it around. In terms of that adjusted completion percentage, he's second behind only Drake May. He's been incredible. So he's been accurate, gets the ball out quick to those playmakers. So with Garrett Wilson, I think that does help him a lot, especially in this matchup. So I like Tyrod just in this matchup against the Bengals. But if Garrett Wilson plays, it helps Breece Hall, just those other receivers in general.
Yeah, even a guy like Mason Taylor, you have to have like some stones to start him after the way things have gone the last 2 weeks, but maybe like a prop perspective, something like that. Or if you're like me and you took Mason Taylor, I think in the 3rd round of my dynasty rookie draft, I'd like to just see him, do something again. Even if I'm not starting him right now, I'd like to see him just do something because this should be the matchup where that can happen. I was just watching this Bengals defense back earlier because I was watching the Packers offense in week 6. There's just so many wide open holes against zone coverage specifically. So that should be favorable for the tight end. It should definitely be favorable for a guy like Garrett Wilson because I maintain, Joel, that the Jets are not a well-coached team. They might be the worst coached team in the NFL right now on like the margins, not great stuff going on there. But I still think the passing game is really well designed. So if we can get a guy in here in Tyrod who's 36 years old, he's not the most athletic guy anymore. He's not the same player he was back when he was like cutting it up with the Bills a decade ago, but he certainly can still get the ball into the right spots. And I think if Garrett Wilson starts, it's good news for him. And even for like quarterback streamers, I think Tyrod's in a decent spot here.
Yeah, that's good to hear about Terran Armstead too in terms of this passing offense. Tyrod, athletically, yeah, not really there anymore, but he is trying. And what I mean by that is his scramble rate is actually number 1 in the NFL when he's been on the field. So he's still running around a lot. This Bengals defense against fantasy quarterbacks, I think he's a great super flex start and a solid Hail Mary if you need it in terms of quarterbacks off of waivers this week. The Bengals, they've allowed 20-plus points to 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks, and usually they are losing, which doesn't help fantasy quarterbacks a lot of times. The Jets here are a touchdown underdog.
In my like 14 team, this is disgusting type leagues that I'm in, I have Jaden Daniels, and I might need to get a Hail Mary at quarterback this week. So I'm waiting to put Jaden Daniels on IR and stick Tyrod Taylor potentially in my starting quarterback spot. So
Yeah.
maybe some of what I'm saying here, Joel, is I'm trying to get us to manifest this for me personally, because ultimately, yes, this is a show for the people, Joel. You're a man of the people. You're out there cutting it up on social media. This is about me, okay? I need my problems here are what really matters.
Yeah, I need it too. I have a super flex league with Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy. So if they're out again, we got some prayers.
That's been super fun. Luckily, it seems like Lamar is going to be back, and I also have a Lamar Jackson Superflex league, and thank God. I've been starting a running back in that spot, which I don't want to be doing. But hey, we're still 10-2 because we've got a points league part of that as well. But all right, enough about my problems. No one cares. Let's get to the fourth Buzz building player here.
Chase Brown is next. So stick in that same game. I fall somewhere in the middle on Chase Brown, just going forward because everything is at an extreme, whether extremely good or extremely bad. So we'll start with the bad so that we can end with the good, In terms of the targets, that was the big hope with Joe Flacco coming in. The running back targets as a whole, not Chase Brown, just as a whole, has been 5 targets and then 4 targets. So it hasn't been as good compared to what he was doing with the Browns. And half of that basically is going to Samaje Perine. And the other big thing that sticks out is just the red zone usage is so bad for Chase Brown, on top of obviously the offense. They're 31st in red zone drives. So the only team worse is Tennessee. So shout out to the Zach Taylor coaching tree right there. But Chase Brown, in terms of when they actually do get down there, he's got 42 snaps without Joe Burrow in the game in the red zone this year. He's got 8 opportunities for 15 yards and no touchdowns. So still doesn't have a single red zone touchdown. And that'll get better. I'm sure he'll end the season with above 0. But I don't think it's going to be amazing going forward. So the red zone opportunities still aren't great. Even with Flacco, when they are scoring a little bit more, that's where the more negatives come in. The positive is finally had a good day on the ground against Pittsburgh, which, not the greatest, but they at least entered the numbers, were more middle of the road. So a good sign there at least. And then the schedule going forward, he's had one of the worst among fantasy running backs. The rest of the way, he is number 1.
That's good to know. I have one team that's already kind of banged that had Chase Brown, so it's kind of over there for me. It doesn't really matter that much, but it was encouraging to at least see him kind of justify the reasons that he was ranked so high, because I think there started with, well, how can you rank this guy just because he was playing with the Bengals offense? It's like, no, I think he's actually a pretty talented player who works well in the run and pass game. So that was at least good to see that. How sustainable do you think what we saw? And I've been asking everybody this week. How sustainable do you think what we saw with Joe Flacco on Thursday night last week is, both from how it affects the receivers, but especially how it might affect Chase Brown?
I would love to hear what everyone else is saying too. I don't know if I caught all of that, but I would be very nervous actually. I think Chase is fine because of how good he is in terms of yards after catch and making plays, all that sort of stuff. But more so when we're talking Chase Brown, even T. Higgins, I wouldn't be shocked if the other shoe drops very soon. I feel like we see this a lot, especially with these backup quarterbacks, these journeymans at the end of their careers, veteran guys, where they come in and they have a little spark and they're great for a couple games, and then they eventually kind of go back to what we've seen the past couple of years. And Flacco, like, he was incredible in 2023, and then 2024, 2025, it was pretty bad. So it's been awesome the last couple of days. I hope it continues, but I don't think it'll be consistently like what we saw on Thursday night last week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there, and my takeaway was it's going to be very matchup dependent. I think people just still don't realize how bad this Steelers defense is, and just how particularly easy they are to take advantage of if you have the right personnel, which the Bengals obviously do, because this is an older defense. They're slower. They can get beat because they play a lot of man coverage, and I think like Joey Porter Jr. is a really good man corner, but he is very undisciplined in zone. And then meanwhile, I think Ramsey is not equipped at this point to man up on receivers, and really neither is Darius Slay. So when we're looking at you going against a good receiver core like Cincinnati, you can really got there. And there is going to be spots like everything we just said, I think, throw out in terms of the skepticism, because they're playing the Jets this week and Sauce Gardner might not play. Like, this is another spot where I think we might see the best of Joe Flacco. Just get in the gun, get in quick game, and distribute the football. Check it down to Chase Brown. Threaten teams vertically so you open up the box and get guys out of there. But when they go up against some stiffer competition, that's where I think it could be a little bit troubling. Like maybe not the Bears in week 9, although they have definitely created some more havoc, but we go against some teams. We'll see what the Ravens defense looks like in week 15, but like Buffalo later on in the season, there's some spots where I think it might be a little bit dicier for Flacco. But for the immediate future, this Jets matchup, I'm willing to get excited about obviously the receivers and even Chase Brown as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Pittsburgh, it does worry me, especially just the post-game comments, like Jamar Chase talking about how they knew exactly what they're going to do. They did it, and they exploited it. Like, it's pretty simple there.
Well, dude, I know what they're going to do, and I'm sitting in my stupid office here. So, like, if I know Jamar Chase, who knows infinitely more ball than me, definitely knows what they're doing. I did also think it was very funny. Flacco had a good interview that I just saw the clip of it on the Andrew Whitworth, Ryan Fitzpatrick podcast, where he's like, yeah, even though I'm like 40 years old, I came in really nervous because I wanted to show these guys like I could throw it to him. Jamar is so good. He's like, I threw one pass to him and it was kind of behind him or whatever in the Packers game. And he had to adjust to it. And I was so embarrassed. I was so nervous. He's like, oh my God, he's going to think I suck. And I just thought that was really funny. Like he truly is just like, I don't know the plays. I don't know anything. I'm just going to throw it to this guy, which that'll work in the right spots. Luckily this week,
it did.
The Jets, I think it's the right spot. Speaking of the Jets, your final buzz is building player also plays for the New York Jets.
Got one more. He's probably not going to do too much this week. Not saying this is a week 8 start, but Isaiah Davis, that trade deadline in the NFL is November 4th. A depressing stat for you, Matt, is the Jets running backs this year have more fantasy points than Philadelphia's. That is how bad it's been for Saquon. He's been getting everything there. So, yes, I know it's not the greatest team, but sometimes you got to take better than nothing. And I think Isaiah Davis is a lot better than nothing. And if Breece Hall does get traded here, there's been lots and lots of buzz, lots and lots of rumors of Breece Hall potentially being traded. They like Isaiah Davis. And with no Braylon Allen in there, he has got some real potential. Last year, with Braylon Allen, I think, Breece Hall missed one game. Isaiah Davis had 16 fantasy opportunities and 15 points, almost 16 points, actually. So it was pretty good for like his one day. He's been good when he's been on the field. These last 3 games, he's actually out-targeted Breece Hall. So that's been a surprise. So they like him in the receiving game, like him overall. So it's not a bad team to be a part of with how much they run. Tyrod Taylor can maybe help this offense, even if he does come in and they're passing a lot more. So I like the potential of Isaiah Davis. I definitely think he's worth a stash if Breece Hall is moved here.
I totally agree. I think he's a good guy just to stick on the end of your bench. And if it comes to be November 5th and Breece Hall is still on this Jets team, you probably just cut him and move on for something else. But I think right now you can definitely stash him. And obviously if injuries happen, of course, then you're picking him back up. But for the time being, just stick him on the end of your bench, see what happens. He's widely available right now. And I do think he can play a little bit. I was impressed in that one game that he played. And, even the Jets coaching staff, Aaron Glenn, this offseason, like, we have 3 good backs. We have 3 backs we believe in here, which was part of the kind of ADP concern of Breece Hall. Braylon Allen probably not coming back this season after he just elected to have surgery on that MCL injury. So I don't think we see him again this year. Isaiah Davis can play a little bit. And like I said, I know the Jets have not won a game this year, and the offense has been what the offense has been. But I still think when I watch this team from a design perspective, not a sequencing, maybe play calling, but the actual just approach of the offense, the bones of it, I do think this is, I can believe in this here if it's got the right quarterback. So for these guys, like typically if you're stashing these backup running backs, you don't want it to be in Garbo ecosystems. Again, I know they haven't won a game, but I don't think this is one of those Garbo ecosystems, Joel.
Yeah, still 94% available. And a lot of times when I am looking at like these backup running backs in fantasy, it is like, what is the confidence that he's actually going to get the volume? And I think it's pretty high here. Like, I don't think we have a Hassan Haskins situation where he's the main pickup in that Chargers backfield and then he's useless. Where Isaiah Davis, if he isn't good in fantasy, I don't think it's going to be because he isn't getting the volume. If Breece Hall were traded, I think he would be that number 1 guy getting 80% of the touches.
All right, buddy. Joel, you said it all. You done it all. You gave us the 5 players who's got some buzz building. What else are you working on this week?
Oh, got our starts video tomorrow. We're going to do some scheduled videos next week, next Tuesday. We're halfway through the season, so that'll be a big one coming up.
Awesome. Make sure you are checking all of those out on Joel's social media, YouTube, everything that we've got going on with Joel has been absolutely fantastic this year. Love having him on this segment every single week. For now, that is going to do it for today's show. Thanks again to Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL, who's all in all season. And don't forget to check out Toyota's game day giveaways for your chance to win. Tomorrow, we'll be back right here at 5 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube with Justin Boone to preview everything you need to know for Week 8. Until then, we are out.